welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. We're going to be chatting all about this upcoming full moon in the sign of Leo. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below. That way you're subscribed to my channel and you're alerted as to when we have new videos that are coming out. Equally, don't forget to like and comment on the video. Give me a thumbs up and let me know where you're tuning in from and what you're experiencing with this full moon in your very own natal chart. So we're going to have this full moon that's going to be coming in. It is action-packed, guys. There's a lot to unpack with this video. And I'm titling this video The Lion's Den, and I'll explain to you guys why I say that. But for the sake of the full moon information, so we'll have this on January 25th, 2024. Obviously, the time is going to depend on where you are in the world. But we're going to see this at 9:54 a.m. on the Pacific coast, and it'll be 12:54 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be having the full moon at 5 degrees of Leo. And those of you guys who don't know, we have a full moon roughly every 28 days. This represents kind of like a climax of what we've been working towards really the last 6 months since we had a new moon in Leo the summer of 2023. Now, if you guys think back, that was a pretty colorful time, right? We had a lot of planets that were in Leo. We also had a Venus retrograde. So maybe we'll take a look at that chart before we kind of complete today's video. But the degrees that are going to be affected, because it'll be at 5 degrees, will be anybody who has any personal placements 3 to 6 degrees of Leo. So if you have a sun, moon, rising, or personal planet there, the full moon is going to be a little bit more active for you. Also, if you have any planets in these degrees in the fixed signs, so 3 to 6 degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, as well as Aquarius, you guys will all be feeling the squeeze of this particular full moon. But I have a feeling everybody's going to be feeling it, especially with the amount of outer planets that are going to be at play with this particular lunation. Now, Leo is a fire sign. It's the 5th sign of the zodiac. It is obviously creative and bold, courageous. It's really all about self-expression, love affairs, and sharing, I guess, like what's in your heart. So obviously Leo is ruled by the sun, which is interesting because this is a lunation. So this is a full moon where the moon is in Leo and the sun is in Aquarius, and we see this really intense square that's kind of building at the time of the moon. The moon is going to be in a square with Jupiter, and it's also going to be opposing the sun. So there's a lot more to unpack in this particular full moon than most other lunations. And you guys are probably just going to be feeling with that Jupiter square that things feel larger than life. Now, in astrology, 5s always deal with strong, bold, courageous energy. It doesn't just have to be in Leo. If you guys follow degree theory, whenever we see 5s, it's going to have that vibration of energy associated with Leo. So it's kind of doubly Leo in this case. It'll be bringing up themes revolving around royals, leaders, athletes, and people who are in the public eye, more so like in entertainment. So we might hear a lot of like drama kind of coming out of Hollywood. But this also represents, I think really focusing on like leadership, creative energies, children, our egos. These are all going to be hot topics at the time of this particular full moon. And in particular, 5s are known for beauty or for charm. There is this sense of like sexiness that oozes from 5s. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because for a lot of people, it can be about romance, and it can be about creativity, creative projects coming to a head, major lessons that we are learning in terms of growth within our romantic relationships, and also our connection to our inner child. Now, the Sabian symbol, for those of you guys who follow the Sabian symbols, the Sabian, we will be reading 6 because we round up. So this full moon is at 5 degrees and change. So we're going to kind of round up to 6. And for this Sabian symbol, it says an old-fashioned woman and an up-to-date girl. The symbol reflects the contrast between traditional values and modern attitudes. It suggests duality or choice between the established ways of the past and the progressive, forward-thinking approach to the present. The old-fashioned woman may represent conservative values, cultural traditions, or outdated attitudes, while the up-to-date girl symbolizes being modern, innovation, and a more liberal kind of mindset. For me, when I think about the Sabian symbol, I think about just the climate of the world right now, and that there seems to be this clash between traditional values and modern attitudes. It's interesting to see Pluto's move into Aquarius. Now we're going to be hanging out with this transit for the better part of the next 9 months. And I think for all of you guys who have Pluto in Leo, it's really kind of out with the old, in with the new. So we're seeing changes in leadership, also changes when it comes to younger groups of people, and really making big shifts in leadership to better kind of preserve the future. So I could definitely see there being this back and forth out in the world about, you know, conservative values, established norms, traditional ways of thinking versus, you know, are we adhering to these cultural customs, societal expectations? Do we have to kind of follow suit with a much more conservative mindset? Are we going to see people being more opinionated and more extreme because Pluto is involved in regards to, you know, future moves to kind of innovate and modernize how we're doing things out in the world? I also feel like this does symbolize that we can embrace innovation and contemporary ideas and a liberated mindset. We can bring these two things together and meet in the middle. After all, we are seeing an opposition at the time of the full moon. That's what, you know, full moons are, when we see the sun in one side and the moon in another. And oppositions are relational. So we have to learn through that kind of stretching of the two polarities how to find the middle ground. Well, interestingly enough, at the time of the full moon, Jupiter is smack dab in the middle between these two planets, and it's going to talk a lot about where we can grow into something where there can be more opportunity, there can be more money, there can be better resources, better self-esteem, and also I think just more support if we're working together rather than feeding into the drama of the contrast, because we're going to see a lot of kind of like meeting of the minds kind of going on during this particular full moon. Generational dynamics come up for me, obviously, because the symbol points to the generational differences and this growing kind of divide between two groups. So it's emphasizing the clash between older, more conservative individuals and younger, more progressive ones. And it suggests the need for understanding and navigating the dynamics between generations. So this is not me politicking. This is quite literally the Sabian symbol. And the irony that this is happening at this time where we're starting to see that there's just more intensity and I think more stark contrast between, you know, people's belief systems about how things have always been versus where we need to go in the future. And because we're at this tipping point, you know, in humanity where people are saying, well, things have been so bad, we need to go in the complete opposite direction. And so with Pluto, there can be a sense of this kind of like Mad Hatter tendency to just want to jump into something, you know, regardless of the blowback, especially in the sign of Aquarius. It's really kind of saying like, okay, everybody must kind of collectively change because Aquarius represents the group. So with the opposition to the moon, right, which is in Leo, and this represents the general consensus of the public, individuals, right, Leo may react very wildly to some of these new, you know, expectations, these new movements, some of these new shifts that are happening within society. And so if Leo is like the younger kind of like high school student, Aquarius can be that Saturnian kind of older person in society. You're definitely going to see a lot of younger people who are going to be speaking out against what's going on with some humanitarian issues. You're going to hear this also in politics as well. And a lot of people are going to be calling for an end of one thing and the beginning of a new when it comes to leadership. I think of like this as also being like a balancing act because the Sabian symbol talks about bringing these two people together. It can imply a choice of balancing or a balancing act between the old and the new. So it's not necessarily about rejecting one in favor of the other, but finding harmonious integration of traditional wisdom and forward thinking in perspectives. So finding the middle ground, right? Not being extreme and leaning in one direction or the other, not looking at things in a sense of being black or white, because the truth might be somewhere in the middle. I think that, for all of us, it's about grappling with the choices that involve, respecting heritage while also embracing progressive, ways of life simultaneously. I do anticipate that this is also touching on cultural shifts, because on a broader scale, the symbol can indicate a larger cultural shift where society's values are now evolving. I mean, that is quite literally Pluto in Aquarius. Society is evolving. The squares to planets in Taurus represent these shifting, values, and whether this is physical values of the monetary system and money and banking, or personal values, we're seeing now planets are starting to come into a square with Jupiter and Uranus. And what this means is that we are going to see, okay, whether you agree with it or not, we are going to see that some of this kind of future thinking extremism is really kind of pressing on people who are saying, well, maybe we need to go back to conservative ways. Maybe we need to, kind of get back down to basics. That's what Taurus is about, especially in the matters of farming, resources, banking, food, and also just our values in general. And so when we see the square that starts to build, and it's being highlighted in this full moon, we start to see where, okay, there's going to be a lot of friction if we're not finding ways to be able to kind of work together and meet in the middle. I think that this does talk about also, reevaluating established norms and deciding how much of the past we're going to be retaining and, how much we're going to be adopting in the changing times. And money the themes of money and finances are going to be, kind of the focal points, because we have this particular square. For me, I think, the last note that I had on this is about personal choices, personal decisions that involve choosing between conforming to traditional expectations or embracing an individual path, and encouraging us to explore our personal values and also to have the courage to make changes or choices that align with our authentic self, because that's what Taurus is all about. Taurus is about, resources, but Leo is basically saying, okay, I'm building off of those resources. Now I'm going to go and put on a show, or I'm going to take that talent and I'm going to, make money off of it, and I'm going to perform, or I'm going to share my gift, or I'm going to create something. And yeah, I think that across the board, it's really pressing everybody to really be asking themselves, is money the motive? It is the motivator. Can I continue to keep living my life and feel happy if I'm feeling kind of bogged down by financial situations? And where are there some things that we're no longer willing to participate in because it's not bringing us happiness? And so through this change that comes with the full moon, perhaps we're kind of realizing, there are things that are more important than money. There are relationships, and there's happiness, and there's self-expression, and there's our children, right? That's also Leo, and the fifth degree. So there's kind of a lot going on here. Obviously, the themes that are associated just generally with the full moon in Leo, we have this once a year. It always rolls through during Aquarius season. The number one thing is self-expression. So when we think of this particular sign, I think of creativity and the ability to really highlight our God-given talent. So during a full moon in Leo, we'll notice that there's a heightened focus on expressing ourselves authentically, and whether that's through art or performance or our own personal style, our romantic relationships, this is going to be really important. And I feel like people might be bursting at the seams with this feeling of, I got to create something, I got to do something, I got to invest in something, I have to share, I have to play. That's really what Leo is all about. And I also see this as an opportunity for us to really grow in our confidence and our courage. Those are two big words that come up a lot when I think of the sign of Leo, because this is what they're known for. So when the full moon comes in, it will be encouraging us on an individual level to really step into the spotlight, to take risks, to be bold, and to embrace that side of ourselves and not be afraid to kind of be in the limelight. Yes, the Sun-Pluto opposition can bring some power struggles. It can bring some challenges with friends. It can bring some issues where some people are telling you, you know, don't be different, be a part of the crowd, don't bring too much attention to yourself, don't make a scene. God love my really good Leo friends. I've got one in particular that every time we go out, we sit down and we're like, okay, so you're not gonna make a scene, right? And you can always tell that moment where she has the opportunity to just really say like lights, camera, action, and do her thing. You can't look away from that energy because there is this sense of really needing to bring the drama to the situation, or really needing to express what's on their heart and what's on their mind with a sense of like fearlessness. And so I see a lot of that in this particular full moon. I feel like the lesson here for me with the opposition to the sun in its fall and Pluto is not allowing other people to dim your light. Like if anything, crank it up another few notches and then some more, you know, light the candles, set the stage, do what you have to do, and don't be afraid of being able to speak out and be passionate about something. Oftentimes with full moons in Leo, we see that there's opportunities for celebration. I mean, the 5th house is about taking chances. It is about gambling. It's about romance. And so we could see that there's an opportunity to come together with other people, experience joy, and it can be about expressing gratitude for our achievements in life. I feel like this is a very romantic full moon as well, even though we have Venus in Capricorn. This particular full moon is really highlighting both in the sign of Leo, but also at a 5, the ability to intensify romantic or passionate feelings. So it can be a time where emotions are running high and relationships may experience a boost of energy or a boost of romance. And so I feel like this can give us the opportunity to say, you know what, maybe we're going to kind of steer away from like doing the group stuff. Like let's do something that's going to be more fun one-on-one, or something that's going to be more intimate, or something that's going to be more private. And I think that that's really what we want to do. We're shying away from feeling like we have to be a part of the collective, or we have to go out with a group of people to have this intimate time with one another. We might be feeling like it makes more sense, or we might feel like our time or our energy or our money is better spent, you know, doing something that can be much more personal with each other. And I would say that with any Leo full moon, but especially with some of the aspects and this being at a 5, we might hear a lot also about the future of relationships and our true feelings, and be better expressing those feelings and talking about the future, and like really going deeper when it comes to just romantic encounters. We can't talk about Leo without leadership and authority. And I think a lot of people would assume that's Capricorn. And while there is some sense of Capricorn being associated with leadership and top-down structures, Leo for me is the person who's in the front of, you know, like the marching band or the order of dancers or performers. And it's somebody who leads a whole creative or professional kind of endeavor. So for this to be connected to leadership and authority, I think that this is about showing those qualities in what you're doing. So you're going to have to look at what house this full moon is taking place in. But it may inspire you to take on a leadership role, to assert yourself, to really pursue your goals with a sense of determination and probably a little bit of pizzazz. Save room for creativity with this full moon and expect playfulness, because I do feel like this is emphasized at this time. It can be a wonderful full moon for engaging in artistic pursuits, hobbies, and also bringing joy to playfulness. That's really what I love about 5th house or Leo energy. It's about really focusing on what is going to make our hearts sing. Likely some of you guys are going to feel with this full moon that other people are trying to kind of put out your fire. That is due to the Pluto-Sun opposition. We'll talk about that, but know that the lesson here is to not let that dampen your style, not let that make you doubt your abilities or your sense of self-worth. We will probably be finding also that there is room for really working on our recognition and appreciation, because Leo really likes a lot of praise. It likes that pat on the back. So during a full moon, the desire for acknowledgement and appreciation is likely going to be a little bit higher. So it's a time to recognize and celebrate the achievements of others, not just kind of blowing our own horn. And I think that that's the challenge of this full moon with the moon in Leo. There's a lot of like, well, look at me, what about me? Versus that Sun Pluto in Aquarius, which is like, well, other people are going through, you know, challenges, or other people are struggling, or there's crisis in this area. So don't celebrate, you know, your victories because, you know, so-and-so is not doing so well. So there can be this sense of also being kind of, being like guilted or being made to feel guilty for being successful, right? And so we're going to see a lot of stark differences, I think, with some of the oppositions, where there's going to be some people who are just absolutely, you know, excelling and other people who are not. And the question is going to be, well, how do we look at that as a society? Are we really going to continue to be okay with seeing people who are just dealing with, you know, poverty versus people who are just like exploding with cash? But also, you know, does that mean that you're successful because you have a lot of money? Does that necessarily make you happy? And where as a group are we moving forward with Pluto and Aquarius and recognizing that we're no longer focusing on sole individuals in a sense of their creativity or their talent? We're more looking towards bringing people on and being a part of a team and kind of collaborating and adding your talent into group endeavors. And so we're going to shift the way that we're looking at stardom. We're going to shift the way that we're looking at fame. You're going to see people who aren't really chasing fame that become very famous. You're going to see also where some people are used to being on top, and suddenly it's like that record scratch moment where it's like, now, you know, the tides have turned. I think all in all, though, you know, a Leo full moon provides a lot of opportunity for warmth and generosity. And I think we could all use that, especially in some places of the world right now who are experiencing just some like frigid cold weather. This full moon can definitely encourage acts of kindness, generosity, and a desire to share positive energy with other people. Especially with this moon being in opposition to Sun and Pluto, I think we're going to be hearing more about solar energy. I think we're going to be hearing more about innovations in technology and how we can be growing and evolving and learning more about new options. So that way we feel like we can have warmth and security for all. Now, in terms of the aspects, something I did note, and I really didn't pick this up until right before I filmed this video, so I'm glad I caught it. And you guys know me, I go way out into the future and I'll talk about things and then I'll come back and do the video 6 months later and be like, remember how I said this? And then it's happening. Well, at the end of 2024, we're going to have a Mars retrograde. Mars will turn retrograde in the sign of Leo and it'll return into the sign of Cancer. And we'll experience that Mars retrograde from December of 2024 through the beginning of 2025. Now you're probably asking me, why is that important? That's a year from now. I can't even think about next Sunday. It's important because this full moon is actually going to be taking place along the same degrees as to where we're going to have that Mars retrograde. Mars is going to turn retrograde at the beginning of December 2024, and it looks like it's going to be right around 6 degrees. So it's going to be in conjunction to this particular full moon degree. So what does that mean? Well, at the end of this year, beginning of 2025, Mars, which rules the North Node, will retrograde through there, activating the Sabian symbol. And it means that we're all going to be finding that we're having some challenges or conflicts in better asserting our energy. But also, I think it's going to be these very same topics where we're going back and forth about this extremism in the world and whether or not we're feeling like we're too liberal or too conservative. Throughout that Mars retrograde, we'll see Mars make 2 oppositions, maybe 3, now that I think about it, to Pluto, which will be in and out of Capricorn and Aquarius. So it is possible that somehow, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, you know, political things or campaigns or the future of like politics is being kind of highly affected by this Mars retrograde, and whether or not people are feeling angry, agitated, concerned about, you know, whoever this next candidate may be, and if the country or the world, actually, because I'm an American, but I'm just thinking about this in a sense of where I live, how that may be affecting the masses, and if there's concern for leaning too far one way or the other, which I think is fair to say. I think that like I said, the truth can be somewhere in the middle, but I think that people have concerns about that on both sides. And really what this is highlighting, I think, through the opposition is where extreme polarity can actually be very dangerous. Not just dangerous in a physical sense, but it can have some very severe financial implications. So I'm looking at that square to Jupiter and I'm like, we should not be putting all of our eggs in one basket financially or politically, or in a sense of what we're doing with this, sudden concern for environmental issues and global health matters. So that's going to come up here as well. Obviously, the sun is ruled by Leo, right? So, or Leo is ruled by the sun. So we see the moon in Leo. So it's in a feminine placement. So the moon is about our emotions. It's about our roots, our past, our home, and it's in a fire sign. So it's going to be active. It's going to be bold, creative. It's going to want to play. So with the moon being here, it means that collectively, this is kind of what we're all feeling. But we always have to look at the sun when we have a full moon in Leo, because the sun rules Leo. And the sun is in its fall in Aquarius, which means it's in a sign where the individual kind of gets lost in the sea of the crowd, right? Aquarius. And it's possible that it's losing energy because it's not able to kind of be where it wants to be. It can't really put on a show because it's getting lost in the sea of the crowd. We also see that the sun is in conjunction to Pluto. So just recently, as you guys are watching this, the ingress is about to happen, but it's still highlighting, probably from about mid-January on, some of the effects of that Pluto ingress. That's going to take 20 years to see how that plays out. Just now, looking at Pluto getting ready to leave Capricorn, we're starting to really get an idea of just what the heck has been happening since 2008. How much power, corruption, and control has been kind of going on from top-down structures, whether it's in big business or in politics. You know, leadership is really, for me, like Capricorn. It's not just Leo. Leo can be where the individual leads. Capricorn is like overseeing the whole thing. So we're going to start to see where some smaller leaders, you know, sergeants, generals, and armies are kind of speaking up in opposition, and they're challenging the powers that be right now. With the sun conjunction to Pluto, this is about shining a light in the dark. So all this next week or two, you guys are going to see that as the sun and Pluto come into conjunction, it's like turning that flashlight on and exposing something. Remember that Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius in terms of modern terms. And so we've got Uranus that's going to go direct here pretty soon. Jupiter's in the same sign. So it's going to be really highlighting, I think, issues with money, fraud, corruption, crime in regards to Congress, group crime. We've heard a lot of this in regards to like gang issues in parts of the world recently. And obviously that square to Jupiter in Taurus makes all of this feel larger than life. So it's like, yes, the full moon is in Leo, and some people might look at their chart and go, well, I've got a full moon in this house, so it means this thing. Not so much. This is one of those lunations where you absolutely, positively must look at the opposite house, because there's something about relating to that house that plays a role in this. Oh, and then you have to look at the square to Jupiter that's making the whole thing go kaboom. So expect the Jupiter square to make things larger than life, especially now that Jupiter is direct. In my mind, this is going to create situations involving increased financial matters, banking resources, and other expenses to skyrocket. I mean, quite literally, if Jupiter in Taurus is about increasing food costs, the sun and Pluto, it could be about people who are rioting, groups that are coming together, people that are angry about just, how much is going on out in the world, where people can't afford to, buy groceries, they can't pay their energy bills. And so you're going to start to see people coming together saying, like, this is not working, this is not okay. So this may all really be kind of happening right around the time of the full moon, which is already intense because Pluto's going to ingress into Aquarius. We're going to see a mass awakening. Sun's going to conjunct Pluto. My goodness, it's a wild time. For me, I think about the moon being in Leo. and the opposition to the Sun and Pluto. And that basically means that you're going to see some people coming out saying, you know, it's time to challenge the existing order, to hell with the king or the ruler. It's time for them to go, telling them that there needs to be, you know, new leadership that is kind of being ushered in. Otherwise, there's going to be some kind of crisis. I'm not condoning any of this stuff. I'm not saying that this stuff should happen. I'm just reading the astrology. The moon in Leo also, it provides some drama, okay? So with that moon in opposition to Pluto, it also represents, and you'll see this right when the moon ingresses into Leo, the first aspect it's going to make is an opposition to Pluto, and then it's going to be a full moon. So it's reacting and responding to political scandals, to crises, to, some kind of circus that's going on with group situations. And it can be dangerous. I don't say this to scare people, but any opposition to Pluto can definitely represent a dangerous or a challenging situation, something that can be deadly depending on some of the other aspects. I think that there's other things going on that make me feel that way as well, like, a building square that we're going to see with Mars and the nodes, and Mars is coming into a square with Chiron. So there definitely can be some things going on that are not necessarily safe. So consider your environment at the time of this full moon as well, because you're going to have some people who are just going to go with the herd mentality and they're just going to get angry and react. Anyway, Mercury is in conjunction to Mars. And so we've seen this before, right? Maybe you're having deja vu. We saw a Mercury-Mars conjunction in Sagittarius while Mercury was retrograde. We're going to see them come into conjunction again here just right after the full moon, but this is going to be building. And for me, that's like, when I think about it, that's leader talk, right? Mercury, which is the mind, in the sign of Capricorn, which is structure and mature and balanced, and it's got a game plan, and, it takes responsibility. And then Mars's exaltation in the sign of Capricorn, where it's taking orders. My goodness, it's like, I have a feeling, and this is just a hunch, this is once again not me politicking, but I have a feeling and I have some hope and I have some faith that there are going to be some service members, some police officers, some leaders, some, bosses, whoever, people in society, especially within the military or the organized forces because of that Mars square, that are stepping up and saying, no, I'm not going to obey that order. I'm not going to go against the law. I'm not going to hurt people. I'm not going to do this because it's not right. And they're going to actually grow a backbone and start realizing that they cannot go against, people's free will. They can't go against people's rights. So this to me, like I said, sounds like leader talk. And the Mercury-Mars is very militant. And that growing, square to the nodes is being tipped off first with squares to Chiron, which is where action is being taken in government, where they're being assertive, or there's some kind of military mobilization, or there's some kind of decision with jobs and job cuts, Mercury-Mars, that's hurting the individual. Like there's literally, at least here in the United States, there's legislation that's going down right now that is impacting people's ability to work. You can argue job numbers until the cows come home. We know that statistics can easily be manipulated. And if you really unpack the job numbers and you see all of the stuff that's being said about the jobs that are being created, that's not really being seen out in the world. We're actually seeing that a lot of those numbers are connected to people who are taking part-time work, but we're seeing more loss of full-time work. So lack of leadership and appropriate, I think, legislation and like misspending, obviously, is creating a lot of issues that's impacting the individual. So regardless of where you stand on politics, it's not so much like a jab at any one particular, person's president or prime minister or even their political parties. It's just more like, hey, people are making decisions that are negatively impacting and hurting individuals. So, where can we stand up and go, this isn't working? And I think more people are going to kind of wake up with that. We're going to see the issues also coming up revolving around issues with authority and how tyrants or leadership are hurting us on this individual level. And then we'll leave it on a high note because this is positive. Venus is coming into a trine with Jupiter. Okay, so we've got Venus now in Capricorn that is in a much more conservative sign. It is responsible. It is about long-term goals and kind of having relationships stick and last. And we have Mars and Venus in the same sign, which is actually kind of nice because this is harmonious for the North and the South node. So they're both about legacy, long-term goals, especially with career or public reputation. And Venus is trining Jupiter in Taurus, which means it can be good news for the future of our resources, our self-esteem, our physical health. And Venus-Jupiter trines, generally can promote more wealth. It can also bring us more opportunities when it comes to relationships and growth within a relationship, but in a way that's really visible because it's taking place in Earth signs. I should note also that, the moon being in the sign of Leo can kick up and bring a lot of attention to the stock market because markets are speculative and risks, and that's what Leo is all about. So to see the moon come into an opposition with the sun and Pluto makes me wonder if we're going to be hearing more about Congress's involvement in terms of their awareness of things that are going on out in the world and their buying or selling or trading of stock, and some kind of exposure that comes from that. So that might be something that we'll see as well. Also, the children of leaders and how they're in the spotlight and kind of not necessarily helping their cause. All right, so some themes that I was thinking about are some prompts maybe that came up for me because I'm trying to focus more on not just being like, here's what's going to happen, here's the news, because I know not everybody listens to astrology videos for that purpose. Some people say, well, I'd like to know more about how this impacts me. I would say, great, listen to the 12 signs, watch your horoscope. Many people have seen my work for a long time. You guys know that I'm very opinionated about how I think the astrology is really showing us what's going on in the world. And I like to educate people as well in terms of how to see these patterns because it can be really helpful in better understanding and interpreting future transits as they come. But the themes for those of you guys who are like, how do I work with this, that came up for me are, how can I focus my creative talent without fear of failure? And I think that's a big one because the opposition to Pluto can represent the what if I bust, what if it doesn't work, what if I go broke, what if it doesn't work, what if they reject me, what if they don't like what I put out there. So definitely focusing on really harnessing the positive energy of this. Jupiter square the moon is like, yes, I can do it. And there's big emotions, but it's like, okay, let's go. And it can give you the opportunity also to kind of really shine very brightly, especially in areas of a creative nature. I would also be asking myself, what do I bring to the collective? I've been asking myself that a lot recently, and like some of you guys might laugh and be like, well, you're doing this all the time. Yeah, I'm doing this, but think bigger than that, right? Because Jupiter wants us to think big. What are we doing more than just that one thing that we do every so often? How can we, help inspire other people? How can we teach other people? How can we kind of go bigger with some of this growth? We know Pluto in Aquarius is definitely going to be shifting everything for everybody in terms of the future, but the future doesn't have to be doom or gloom. And I think that, so much of the oppositions to Pluto really show us, okay, what are you afraid of? And then Pluto goes, okay, here's that thing. So I would caution you against going like, well, I'm afraid of, doing this thing, or I'm afraid of something not working. Once again, going back to being afraid of failure. But ask yourself, what is it that you're doing to assist this evolution that's kind of going on with Pluto and Aquarius? How can you bring some of your natural talents into the front and center and be able to help this process for everybody to evolve? Are you going to join a common cause? Are you going to do some work where you're doing some roots work for somebody? Are you going to be donating your time or your services? How can you be helping younger people? How can you be a leader for younger people, for your own children? This is very important. And also ask yourself, what do you love? And what are you the most passionate about? That's a big one. I think that's so much of the energy of Leo in the 5th house, but especially out of 5. It's like, if you really love something or someone, then you have to be willing to protect that at all costs. And that really is the opposition to Pluto. It means that if you're potentially facing some kind of grave danger, or there is some potential situation that can become dangerous. What are you willing to do to be able to protect that? And how much do you love that thing? Okay, so then you have to go to bat for it. That can be children, a relationship, a project, a job, And some people might be finding themselves in little mini ego battles. That can definitely be happening. And I would say that so much of the lesson here at the square to Jupiter is that if we let pride and ego get in the way, then we're going to find that we're going to burn a lot of bridges. We're going to create a lot of drama in the process. So sometimes it's about dropping the ego, right? Sun conjunct Pluto. The ego is dying, and maybe it dies and it goes off with a bang and there's a lot of drama. But what do we learn from that, right? Jupiter and Taurus. What do we learn throughout that process? I would be asking myself, what does your heart say and how is your inner child doing? Have you checked in with them regularly? Are they throwing a tantrum? Those of you guys who have kids, you know that there can just be moments where it's like once, you take something away from them or, you put them in a corner and you tell them to think about how they've been behaving, there's just like this meltdown, right? And so I think of like Moon in opposition to Pluto as emotional meltdown, but also feeling emotionally threatened, and that meltdown stems from not feeling grounded or not feeling safe or not being given the room or the space to be able to express your emotions, and where there can be a sense of some unhealthy comparisons to other people. That Sun-Pluto can show the darker side of the Pluto transit, where we're kind of saying, well, we just need to be a part of the crowd, just don't say anything, keep quiet, don't cause a scene, go along with things. To which I would say, no, that's not really how this energy works. And if you do suppress that fire, if you do suppress that feeling, you're putting something out that's really important that shouldn't be put out. So you may need to be addressing, big emotions that are coming up right now and asking yourself, what are they really saying? Also, how can you remain calm and grounded in a world of polarity? I don't have the answer to that question. I wish I did, but I promise you I'm meditating on it. But in a world where there is such stark contrasts and everything seems to be very black and white, and that there is a lot of left or right or this or that or right or wrong, we will see a lot of polarity and a lot of people getting very extreme, because that's what Pluto is, about this polarity, and almost making you feel like you need to pick a side or pick a side of the fence, or need to associate yourself with something or with a group. And so maybe I've been a stickler about this, but this is something that's really come up for me a lot over the last couple of years, where people want to ask me, what my, political orientation is, or people want to ask me what my pronouns are. People want to ask me all kinds of things, like what I put on my Facebook user pick, and whether or not I'm addressing certain issues and why I'm shunning certain groups of people, to which I'm always quick to say, I don't subscribe to any of that bullshit. I will not play that game. That's very much my North Node in Aquarius. I will not do that. It's in my 5th house. So part of the reason why I think that I have been able to, I continue to keep doing what I'm doing, is because I'm a stickler for being like, no, I'm not going to play the divisive games. And I'm also not going to fall into the trappings of associating myself with any one particular group, because I'm an individual. And it just so happens, I don't think a lot of people like that. Some people do, but for what it's worth, I think that really what we're being asked to do right now is, when we see this polarity, to not subscribe to that, to not get involved in that, to not jump into extremism, to not also get too teachy, too preachy, which can be hard with these Jupiter squares. In order to do this, we're going to find that we have to confront power struggles. And the question is how can we do this in a courageous way? How can we do this in a way where we're not just being told, oh, we're being dramatic, or we're not just being told, oh, this is over the top, or this is too extra. Some people are going to be acting out very passionately during this particular full moon. And the key here is to not take it too far. That's going to be hard with the Jupiter square. It's about confronting power struggles in a way where we are confident but not arrogant. Can be hard because there's going to be a lot of ego stuff that's going to come up. I encourage you guys not to be, consumed by division. Don't let that creep in. Don't let the dark creep in with that Sun-Pluto aspect. And always be focused on shining a light in the dark, because that's really what this is about with the Sun-Pluto conjunction. With the Sun in its fall, it's going to show the darker side of this transit, and likely it's going to bring up a lot of emotions in people. And the key here is to continually be a part of what's going on with this Great Awakening by exposing the dark out in the world. Now, how do I think this is going to play out? Well, I've got some things in terms of how I think it's going to play out in ways that I'm kind of seeing this out in the world. Obviously, expect some drama. You know, I'm not one to like encourage that, but full moons in Leo can bring that out. But especially when you see some of these oppositions and squares to outer planets, it's very, very, very much expected. Especially because we've got that moon that's in a quincunx or an inconjunct to Saturn. And so there is this sense of, you know, don't bring that thing up. Don't talk about that topic. You know, don't go there. And you're going to see some people who are going to be like, okay, a switch is going to flip and they're going to be like, no, I am going to do it. You know, people who once they're told not to do something or not to dig into something, that gives them like that bright idea to do that. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that. Drama, crisis, I mean, these are Pluto words. And so because we see this moon in opposition to Pluto, likely that's what's going to be kind of coming up at the time of the full moon. So if you're a natal Leo sun, moon, or rising, or you know, maybe you've got a lot of Leo in your chart, give them the show, right? We'll get your guys' Oscars ready. In so not so light news, I do think that we're going to be seeing a peak point on some of the topics involving child trafficking, child abuse, Hollywood elites, and politicians that are involved. Enough said with that. I think we're going to be also, because Aquarius is being challenged here, and Aquarius is about science, I think we're going to be challenging the scientific method and showing how there's something dark involved with politics and the plan for future climate change initiatives, like increased energy costs, fuel limits, policy changes that require us to pay more in the name of climate change. I say this because this is the individual, this is the groups and people who are making decisions, and this is the square to Jupiter, which is coming into conjunction with Uranus. If you guys think your energy bills are a lot now, watch what happens over the next 6 to 12 months, because as Jupiter and Uranus get closer and closer, we're going to see that conjunction. And as I said in the past, create the problem, sell you the solution. Okay, things are too expensive. Well, maybe consider switching your vehicle. Maybe consider, oh, you don't want to pay those taxes. Well, you know, it'd be easier to take a bus to work or to use public transit. Things are being, like the pressure is on, basically. We're going to continue to see this pressure. I was watching a video, I think her name is Lily. She does videos on YouTube, and she talks all about what's going on in Europe, and I believe she's in Germany. She was talking about all of the prices and the things that are going on in Germany and the taxes that are coming up for vehicles, for registering vehicles, for emissions and things. And it was just a prime example of her being like, there is stuff that's going on where they're passing legislation to sneak in all of these different taxes and things that's making you pay for this energy jump that we're going to, when in reality, people can't afford it. Not only that, it's not necessarily helping the environment completely. There are some things where I think we're being kind of sold this idea because it's going to be the next way of being able to monopolize on new utilities. Expect more on heart health, the connection to food or consumption or things that people are taking and how it affects the heart. And I say that because the moon, you know, in Leo is talking about how the public is responding to heart matters. You know, Leo can be the heart and the chest. 5 is children. And then we see the opposition to Pluto, which can be some things that can be deadly. And then the square to Jupiter is like the money that people made off of those things. Challenging tyranny, death to the king, death to old ways. Very much the moon in opposition to Pluto was saying, you know, that this is basically more or less what's needing to happen, that people are rebelling. You're not going to see this on the mainstream news, but there's major protests that are going on all over the world right now. I think we're seeing a return to some of them in France, from what I understand. So if you're there, let me know. And we're continuing to see this go on in Germany with the farmers that will continue to keep doing their thing. So challenging, you know, tyranny and basically saying like, no, we're not going to continue to go along with this, and we're certainly not going to continue to pay for this. Out with the old and in with the new. That's a theme that came up for me also with the moon in opposition to Pluto, where There is the end or the death of one cycle and the birth and the beginning of another, because while Cancer is about motherhood and the womb, Leo is where the child is actually born, right? That's where life comes in, the element of fire. So there may be endings in, leadership. There may be endings with, changes with home or family, but new beginnings that are coming from this as well. When I sat on this video and I was thinking about just the aspect to Pluto, something that came up for me really strongly, which is kind of weird because I don't really talk a lot about like biblical stuff, but definitely I was thinking about like Daniel and the lion's den. So if you're somebody who's familiar with the New Testament, I kept thinking about that I think it's Daniel 6, if I remember correctly, and this is not meant to be a sermon, but I was thinking about Daniel in the lion's den and the issue that he had with the matter of his faith. Those of you guys who know the story, essentially the king was like condemning him for his beliefs in God, and they put him in a cave and they rolled like a large boulder in front of it, and the king basically locked it and made it impossible for it to be moved. And they basically said, okay, if your God is going to save you, then, let's see if he saves you. And they put him in this den with a lion to be devoured. The next day, the king, after not being able to sleep all night, came out to see if he was still alive and called his name, and they found him alive. And so it made me really think about this. It made me think about the opposition to Pluto, and that there can be these mad tyrants that can come out that can threaten us and can tell us that, the world is going to be a dark, evil, scary place, that can tell us we have no control or that we shouldn't have any faith, especially with the square to Jupiter, but that the spirit is resilient. And with that moon in Leo, the courage basically that Daniel had, it just reminds me of that, and the willingness to kind of face what could be a very dangerous situation or a death, but instead came out of that and basically was seen to be somebody who was really walking in his faith. So they released him, and then the king told everybody who was like persecuting him, now them and their families are going into the den, and everybody needs to know about this God that Daniel speaks of and his power because he lived. So it's got me thinking about that connection and asking us how we can be more brave and courageous in the face of evil, in the face of death or the dark, and where this is possibly a very peak evolutionary period of growth, especially in our faith, because of the square that we're seeing to Jupiter. Jupiter is faith, and how faith needs to be utilized in a very physical way. We need to see this in a physical way. We're putting our faith into action. We're building on that stone by stone because it's in the sign of Taurus. I also think that we're going to see, a division of belief on life, because Leo is life and children. And you're going to hear so much more about this explosion of topics involving population concerns. To some extent, I'm just overhearing about it because some of the same old people who have been talking about this for years, who was telling us that, in like 2010, that we were all going to be underwater, and we're not, was wrong and will probably continue to be wrong. But recently, I've been hearing talk from WEF members, and we are seeing the meeting in Davos this week, people like John Kerry and various other political villains saying that we need to do something about the world population and that we're in a crisis. The key here with the square is to be grounded and not necessarily blow these situations out of proportion. I'm not saying that we should be for or against it. I'm saying that we should not be jumping to any drastic decisions when it comes to this. If anything, I do believe that Pluto going into Aquarius is going to create this environment where we're basically being told that we need to make sacrifices and end things for the good of all people. That if we want everybody to be, on an even playing field, then, some people must sacrifice some of their own personal happiness, their personal needs. And that's really going to be like the epitome of this particular full moon, where we're going to see it in real time and then review it at the end of December when Mars retrogrades over that. I was thinking about recently over the holiday, I had to take a trip to Chicago, and we were driving through Memphis, and I was thinking like, well, if Memphis is the halfway point, while I'm there, might as well go and see Graceland because I'm a huge Elvis fan. My mom's family were huge into Elvis. And I was like, we have to go and do that if we're going to be there. It seems kind of like a tourist trap, but like, why not? So it was really interesting to go and see that, to go and be in that part of the country, to go and see like a, pre-screening before you go to Graceland, and they talk about his career and, all the things that he did and how he was known as like the king, right? That's how people know Elvis. And the story of the rise and the fall of him and his career, to see him at the top of his career through film and memorabilia, and then also to see his downfall and the effects of, his drug use, his alcohol use, his depression, his issues in his relationship. And so it really reminds me of the sun conjunct Pluto in opposition to the moon. The moon loves the king, but that ultimately, that fame, that stardom, that pressure is what killed him. Some would say, and his manager, but I won't spoil the movie for you. But that sun conjunct Pluto really makes me think about how some people will want fame and power at all costs, and control at all costs. And ultimately, you might win the favor of some people, but what cost does that come, right? What do you ultimately end up paying in the end? And going there and seeing, his home and being able to walk through Graceland and seeing all these places, knowing the story of his family. But in recent years, learning about the death of his daughter and also his grandson, which was Priscilla Presley's son, and then she died 2 years later, leaving only Priscilla, and she's really like the only one other than the granddaughter. And then hearing about all of the drama that's been going on with like the estate, and the fact that there's been this back and forth with Priscilla and Elvis's granddaughter about who's going to have control over Graceland, and then, the granddaughter got it. Just knowing what I know about the relationship they had and some of the struggles that he went through, and being in that house, it was really interesting. If you guys have been there, you know that, when you go out the back and you go into where the pool is, you can actually see where all of the family is buried. You've got Elvis, and in honor of one of his brothers, I think two of his grandparents, and then also his mom, dad, grandparent, and then in memory of his brother. And then he has his daughter, Priscilla, and his grandson who also passed. So it's like you go through this high of being like Elvis, and you see all this stuff, and then at the end it's like, oh, it's like he had this kingdom, but at what cost? And ultimately we all know his fate. So makes me think a lot about the Sun-Pluto conjunction and the opposition to the moon, that if we are putting on a show to an extent where it's just really putting it all out there and burning ourselves out, it may not necessarily be worth, some of the hassle. So I'll leave it with that. I'll take you guys through the 12 signs. If you guys have not seen my videos before, I'm a Western astrologer, so I practice Western astrology. I do not practice Vedic. I will be using the whole sign method, and I will take you through the 12 rising signs and show you exactly where this full moon is taking place. I want to remind you that you have to look at where the sun is in Aquarius. It's going to be in the exact opposite sign, and we want to look at that square to Jupiter. So let me make that maybe a little bit easier for you guys. Let me make a couple tweaks here really quick. All right, so I'm going to start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. So you guys are going to be doing this full moon that you're going to have in the sign of Leo. It will be in your natal 5th house. And the 5th house obviously is all about creativity, and it's about romance. So when you have a full moon in the 5th house, it's really putting an emphasis on creativity, romance, and self-expression. And it's a time to enjoy leisure activities and express your passions. Can be a big turning point in regards to your creative projects, your relationship with children, romantic partnerships as well. At the time of this particular full moon, we're going to see that the sun is going to be in opposition in the 11th house. So you might be finding yourself in collaboration with other people, showing them what you got. And it's going to square Jupiter. So it almost looks like some opportunity to collaborate and work with other people brings you more opportunity for personal fulfillment, stability, better resources, healthier self-esteem. And it can be a time where you're looking at taking chances and bringing something to a group of people, hoping that you're going to strike out and maybe be able to kind of up your financial situation due to this particular full moon. Let's see what the cards have to say for you, Aries. I love this for you. You get the King of Wands. So for me, this is kind of being like, yeah, let's get going. Like, let's show them what I've got. You know, fifth house, I think full moon is really being on stage, putting on a show, sharing with other people, really kind of like making a name for yourself. The King of Wands can be you, whether you're a man or a woman, because it is a fire element. So it is associated with Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Other fire sign people, in particular, people who can kind of help you master something, can come in and help you launch some of these projects. It can be about a relationship that you have with another fire sign. And obviously a full moon in the fifth house can be very significant when it comes to family, children, or pregnancy. Sometimes when I see full moons in the fifth house, that can materialize. In the back of my mind, though, I think about how Mars is in your 10th house right now, and I think it's more about your creative projects and where you might be going in a creative direction, taking a risk when it comes to your profession. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know how it goes, Aries. So we've got my Taurus and Taurus risings. You guys, especially if you have any personal planets, that's going to be between, let's say, 4 and 6 degrees of Taurus. You're going to be feeling the squeeze, but I think it's going to be pretty sweet, to be honest with you. My Tauruses, you're doing this full moon in the sign of Leo in your natal 4th house. So the moon is at home in the 4th house. This is all about home and family. This can be about emotions running high regarding home and family matters. The full moon can bring attention to domestic issues, family relationships, and your sense of security. Now, at the time of the full moon, the sun is in the 10th house. So we see some kind of stretch or stress between what's going on at home and what's going on at work, responsibilities, and kind of feeling like you're being pulled in 2 different directions. In this particular case, you're going to see Jupiter, which is in your sign, squaring that, which means really these are good problems to have. If you have a roof over your head, if you've got family, if you've got work, these are things that I would not be complaining about. I think Jupiter on your ascendant is really encouraging you to be positive and look at future changes with both of these things in a very positive manner. I know Pluto is moving into your 10th house, Taurus, so there's big changes and transformations going on with your reputation and also with your career. And the key here is to really see that within this growth and this empowerment, it makes all things possible for your home and family. I really feel like also if you're moving or if you're signing a lease or if you're selling a house or finishing renovating something, that can be something that can take place at the full moon. And obviously Leo being the sign of children, Taurus, if you have kids, it can be about being really positive and optimistic about that relationship and having kids home or going back home to see parents or see family, and really realizing or recognizing that maybe it's time to change the way that you're working so that way you can really focus on some of the joy that you can be experiencing with your home and with your family. Let's take a look. The moon in the 4th house could also be about women at home or something going on with a woman that you live with or female relatives. The card that I get is the 7 of Swords. And intuitively, I'm wondering if this is being like, I don't know if I could trust a situation at home. I don't know if this is going to continue. Am I outgrowing this living situation? Am I outgrowing something in regards to old, outdated emotional reactions or responses? 7 of Swords can also deal with the trust issues of other people. And so I think of like, right now Venus is moving through Capricorn. So it's going to be in your 9th house. So it can also indicate that you're traveling home because you're feeling like you need to be there for somebody. And you're like, okay, they're telling me everything's fine, but I'm going to, check in with them again, or I'm going to reconnect with them. And you might be feeling like you need to kind of like venture a little bit more. So it is possible that you're having to go and be with family in another place as well. Good luck. We've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You'll be experiencing a full moon in Leo, and this will be taking place in your natal 3rd house. For you, Gemini, this is all about communication and learning. You're very familiar with 3rd house energy, so I think this will do well for you. Communication and learning get highlighted during this moon, and you might express your thoughts and ideas more passionately, and there could be a focus on siblings or short trips. So for you guys, a full moon in the 3rd house and the opposition that you're seeing to the sun might be a little bit easier for you because air and fire work well together. So usually when the full moon happens in the 3rd house, you're traveling, going on a road trip, signing contracts, The only challenge is that there seems to be a need to be able to learn or better understand or better relate to someone. And it is going to square Jupiter. So there could be sudden unexpected travel opportunities or trips, unexpected phone calls, visits, things going on with neighbors and stuff of that nature. And if you're looking to really assess how well maybe an online website is doing or an online business, maybe you're wanting to launch a YouTube channel, maybe you want to start a blog, maybe there's some kind of change going on with a vehicle, or you're wanting to complete writing something, this is the perfect time to do that with this full moon in your third house. And I like that you have the sun and also Pluto trining your ascendant while you have this full moon. So some of you guys, it can be about signing a document relating to travel, or it can be something involving a commitment to a new, like a creative or an educational program. And maybe you're like completing that process, so that way you can start doing that type of education. The square to Jupiter is about, I think, faith behind the scenes. Maybe it's about overcoming challenges in language barriers or differences of beliefs. And so like a full moon in the third house can mean that you're reading up on something, or you're learning a new, or learning a new language, or completing a book. The card that I get for you is the Five of Swords. So obviously like a full moon in the third house can bring lots of communication. And I really feel like probably with the opposition to the sun and Pluto in Aquarius, it's really highlighting like where there can be some intense exchanges if you don't share the same belief system or perspective as another person. It can be with a neighbor, somebody you meet in the neighborhood, with a sibling. Any of these things can kind of come up, and there can definitely be some hurt feelings with the Five of Swords. So it's really important to watch your words, how you communicate, try not to be too intense. There can be some people who can be quite combative with that card towards you, and I think that you want to lean more into the square with Jupiter, where it's like if you don't know about something, or you're not sure, or you don't want to push it, don't push it, because there can be some intense exchanges between you and other people. Okay? Good luck, Gemini. Let me add Pluto on here. I realized I took Pluto off. There we go. All right, so we've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You're going to be doing this full moon in Leo. It'll be in your natal second house. And the second house for you is all about your finances and your values. So this is your money house. Financial matters and personal values come into focus during a full moon here, and the full moon can bring awareness to your financial situation, possessions, and how much you derive your self-worth. So these are financial houses. The second house is what you own, your spending power, your personal possessions, your own resources, and your self-esteem. And the eighth house represents other people. Okay, so this is money matters that are coming up. Pluto just recently went into your eighth house, which is a big change in regards to your resources and your relationship with other people's money. There could be some real big changes going on where maybe spousal money or an inheritance or a tax matter or a change in job is definitely showing you where other people are changing what they're willing to give you or what you have access to. It can also mean that there is like an opportunity to really work through or heal some kind of joint resource matter. Now, at the time of the full moon, we're going to see obviously the opposition in the second and the eighth house, but also a square to Jupiter. Okay, so basically this is saying like you may have friends in high places, wealthy friends, connected friends, people who might be literally in other places or might be culturally diverse or rich with resources or ways to help when it comes to overcoming a financial situation. Generally with like a full moon in the second house, I see big purchases, payoffs, you know, we get checks that are owed to us. Sometimes we have to you know, bring money in through the second house, and then we pay stuff off through the eighth house. So you might have friends that have a helping hand, or they might be helping you through the process of like rebuilding your life or growing on your resources or your self-esteem, so that way you're feeling more secure. This is also like financial houses in general. If the second is what you possess and the eighth is like what other people have, Jupiter is the money that comes in from your job. So it can also mean that like there is a sudden spike and you're bringing in more resources that comes from your business doing well, or some kind of group endeavor, and it allows you to bring in more money so that way you can better handle some of these sudden changes in your resources. Pluto does well in the 8th house, but I think for you, because you're ruled by the moon, that with that moon in the 2nd house, you're like, what about, you know, what I have? Like, I need something. And other people can be like, yeah, you're not getting the loan, or, you know, the credit's not extended, or somebody says, okay, you know, I'm not giving you an allowance anymore, or I'm not sharing resources with you anymore. And so you're starting to kind of really focus on, all right, how can I be building elsewhere? The card that I get is the Justice card. So this is for you. This is all about balance and harmonizing your relationship with other people, finding that middle ground, which I love. That's what Jupiter wants to do in this chart. I do feel like this is like relationship karma. So I could see where, you know, after a Mercury retrograde in your 7th, you've reassessed your relationship with other people, whether it's a romantic partner or, you know, business partner. And now you're like, okay, you know, like I need something from you, right? I need something for you if we're going to walk away from this relationship, or it can be a division of assets that can be happening here and you're trying to negotiate something. Insurance matters can also be coming up here as well. So you can be waiting on somebody to tell you whether or not something's covered, or whether or not they're going to give you clearance, or if you're going to be getting some kind of support. And likely with the squares to Jupiter, I do feel like you're going to get what you need. You're going to have either a group or a friend that's going to say, hey, I've got your back. And it's going to help you kind of work your way out of this situation if you're feeling a little stuck or afraid to initiate change. Good luck. All right, so we've got Leo and Leo rising. Obviously, all eyes are on you, Leo. This is a full moon that's taking place in your natal 1st house. For you, the full moon is all about bringing the attention to your physical appearance, your body, your goals. This is a full moon that is all about your identity. So it can mean that you're completing a certain phase that you've been working towards completing. Your appearance might change. Your personal goals come to fruition. And it's a time for self-reflection and asserting yourself and your individuality, because the 1st house is all about me. The challenge here is that it's in opposition to Pluto and the Sun, and it's in your 7th house. So if you have any personal placements between 4 and 6 degrees of Leo, you're going to be the most impacted. Well, a full moon can mean like a new haircut, a dramatic change to your appearance. It can be also a pregnancy on the ascendant. This is a completion of a phase for you. And when the moon is in the 1st house, we can be a lot more emotionally sensitive than usual. The opposition to the Sun, which is your ruler in the 7th house, and Pluto basically says you may be reacting to a change or a transformation that somebody else is going through, right? So 7th house can be a client. It can be also a romantic partner. It could be a friend because it's Aquarius, and you're responding to them going through some kind of personal change or crisis. Equally at the same time, you know, the Sun coming into conjunction with Pluto means that you are initiating this change with this other person, that you're telling somebody else, you know, this is or is not working for me, or this is how we should come together. The Sun-Pluto conjunction can represent powerful transformations in relationships, and the square to Jupiter at the top part of the chart can mean that it's because of true love. It's because you want to create something together. You want to commit to each other. You want to get married. You want to be public. So it's not all doom and gloom. Obviously, Pluto going in the 7th house is going to show you where there is definitive change coming, whether you like it or not, in relationships. You're going to have to reflect on what's happened while Saturn was in the sign of Aquarius. And some of you guys have gone through a lot of, you know, turbulence in relationships only for the relationship to now be reborn. I have heard from a number of people who have said they've lost their spouses during these transits. I'm sorry to hear that if you have. But this can be where if you're single or if you're not partnered, you're opening up to the idea of connecting with another person, and you might meet somebody that really kind of intrigues you. Great for work, great for clients, because this is also squaring Jupiter, which is at your in your 10th house of career. And this is all about your own creative personal endeavors, and where maybe you're attracting and bringing people in who can see what you have to offer. This is a very, very, very big full moon for you. And I'm not just saying that because it's in your sign. I'm saying that because of the aspects. I think that you and Scorpio are the ones that I'm really looking at that are going to probably be feeling this the most, to be honest with you. So you have to let me know. You have to let me know what happens with this full moon. I do feel like it's a time where there's more visibility and there's more of you being seen. So be mindful that your reputation and what other people think of you is going to be a big theme here as well. Let's see what cards you get. Oof, I get the Nine of Swords. So with the Nine of Swords, what does this represent? Well, this is all about stress, anxiety, worry, trying to worry about something that you have no control over, feeling as if you are, like having a lot of grief or a lot of fear about something that you can't change. I wonder what that Sun-Pluto conjunction is like, the fear of change in a relationship and what that means. Or, moving forward and being like, I'm not sure if I, want to commit, but, I'm willing to change. And, what does that mean? What do you personally have to give up in order to enter into partnership with another person? It can mean, because the sun's in the 7th house, that there's another person who's going through a lot of grief or a lot of personal crisis and change. And it's all about how you respond to that. So be mindful that other people can be going through some stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean it's your stuff. I could see you wanting to be there to support them, through that time, but there could also be just a lot of challenging kind of moving pieces throughout that whole situation. So let me know. It's definitely a difficult card for Leo. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm going to tell it like it is. So I'm hoping it's not the ending of a relationship, because for some people, they may look at the Sun-Pluto conjunction and go like, this person's not changing. I got to choose me. I have to walk away. But for other people, they could see the opportunity to work through that crisis and actually be stronger together. Okay, good luck. We have got Virgo and Virgo rising. You will be experiencing this full moon in Leo in your natal 12th house. And it will be opposing the sun in Aquarius and Pluto in Aquarius in your 5th house. For you, Virgo, this is all about spirituality and your inner life. So the full moon in the 12th house may prompt introspection and reflection in your inner life, dreams, and spiritual journey. It's a time for emotional healing and self-discovery. Well, when the moon's in the 12th house, we want to go and find our hiding place, right? And the 12th house can be meditation. It can be, sleeping in. It could mean that we're working in a creative studio privately. It means that we need to just kind of be alone for a little bit. This particular full moon with the opposition to your 6th house is possibly showing you where, unhealthy habits, tendencies, work situations, relationships also with people at work can be making us feel like we need to kind of be isolated or alone. I think about how, Mercury is hanging out now in Capricorn at the time of this full moon. So we're going to see Mercury down here, which means you're really focusing on creativity, self-expression, love affairs. So a full moon in the 12th house means that you could be working hard behind the scenes on some of these things. It could also mean that maybe there's some question marks about the future in regards to a relationship. And so you're kind of sitting and thinking about it. Definitely having a really strong relationship with your faith and your spiritual practice is really important. The 12th house can be about letting things go and healing something spiritually. So being tuned into your higher self, being tuned into your dreams, and maybe even taking some time alone to kind of pause and reflect and asking yourself, am I hiding out from things? Am I becoming aware that there are some, bad habits or bad tendencies that are kind of coming up that I need to be working on? I know that Jupiter and Uranus are hanging out in your 9th house. And so a lot of this is going to be about learning about healthier schedules, healthier habits, healthier routines. It's also going to be about changing your day-to-day life and making more room for travel or continuing education. On the flip side, having the moon in the 12th house can be a hidden kind of romantic, passionate, private time. That can definitely be the case here as well. So there can be a little bit of romance going on behind the scenes. Let's take a look and see what the cards say. Ooh, just as I thought, Ace of Cups. So you may be one of the signs that's really experiencing like the more kind of sensual, sexy, romantic, vibey feelings. I would just say as long as it's not something that is too passionate, too intense. You know, I almost wonder if there can be like some love in the workplace going on. Venus and Capricorn in your 6th house, but also with the Sun-Pluto conjunction in the 6th. There might be somebody that you meet at work or at the gym or in some kind of work or professional setting, and you're like, oh, I got to keep this behind, you know, closed doors. But the Ace of Cups is about new opportunity for love and relationships and a renewal of that. So for existing relationships, getting sweeter, going deeper. For people who are single, maybe it's about an opportunity to connect with somebody and kind of feeling like the stars are aligning. Good luck, Virgo. We've got Libra and Libra rising. You will be experiencing a full moon in the sign of Leo in your natal 11th house, Libra. And this will be opposing, you've got the 5th house, Sun and Pluto conjunction, and squaring Jupiter. All right, so for you, Libra, this taking place in the 11th house is all about social groups and gatherings. So it's about social connections, friendships, long-term goals, highlighted during the time of this full moon because it's in your 11th house. You may feel a sense of fulfillment throughout your social networks. So there can definitely be a sense of other people celebrating you, other people congratulating you, talking to you about your accomplishments and what you bring to the table. Because you're an inverted sign, you have to learn how to do both houses and both signs. So there may be a sense of you getting recognition because of what you contribute. That Sun is moving through your 5th house of creativity, joy, and self-expression. And it might mean that your talents are being brought onto the stage with groups of other people. Very positive for you, Libra. You know, this is squaring Jupiter, which is in your 8th house, which means this can really bring more money to you. It can bring more opportunities in terms of emotional growth. It can also really give you the opportunity to overcome any sense of self-esteem issues or self-doubt. We've got the Sun and Pluto in harmony with your ascendant in the full moon that will be sextiling. So it's going to be good for relating. It's funny because Venus is actually hanging out in your 4th house when this happens, and that's your chart ruler. So I think that this is more about like maybe doing some work from home. Maybe you're, getting recognition from friends about moves or changes with your home or your private life. It can mean that you're bringing people in and maybe trying to entertain at home. And then we have that Sun Pluto going through your 5th house where you're getting really passionate about playtime, creativity, romance, children, self-expression, and how something is changing about this, and you're excited to share the news with other people. So a lot easier for you and the other air signs during this particular full moon. The only catch here is that, Jupiter in the 5th house is expanding on these topics. So it means that, in order to get the recognition, you have to be willing to stand out. You have to be different. You have to be willing to take risks. And big risks can promote big reward, especially if you have like a community business or a business online or a website or a YouTube or a blog. That can be bringing a lot more opportunity for money your way. The card that I get is the 6 of Cups. For me, this makes me think of like, obviously the 6 of Cups is about reconciliation. So it is about connecting with people. If you haven't seen friends in a while, it gives you the opportunity to reconnect and see some of these people and fill them in on what's been changing in your life. But also it can be about you returning and, connecting to sweeter times, to childlike times, reflecting on when you had good times with your friends. You might be reaching out and sharing stories with people. You might be feeling like a little sentimental because this card can kind of come up and it can have you thinking about, hey, remember when, or we did this, or we did that. And it can bring some sense of wanting to reach out and share the joy that you had in those moments with other people. And it can be very therapeutic. I think that with the Sun and Pluto in the 5th house, this does talk about younger people, children. It can talk about also reconciling with romantic partners. So if there's been some issues there, that 6 of Cups looks like it's sweet and that you have the opportunity to come together and make amends. Hopefully that's helpful, Libra. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You will be doing this full moon in the sign of Leo in your natal 10th house. So the 10th house is all about your career and your public life, your legacy. A full moon here can bring attention to your career, your ambitions, and your public image. And it's a time to assess your professional goals and achievements. So Scorpio, sun, moon, rising, especially if you have any personal placements from 4 to 6 degrees, like buckle up. You will be experiencing a grand fixed cross, Scorpio, because you're the missing piece of the puzzle. So you're going to see that there's pressure in all of these areas. So major changes and completions at work have an impact on you personally, which also impacts your home and your family, which also impacts your relationship. So big decisions being made professionally or at work. I think about how the sun rules Leo, and it's in the 4th house. And even though this is like, you could change jobs, you could get a raise, you could launch something new, you could get some opportunity to have the spotlight, to be seen, and a lot of good things can come from it. The sun is at the bottom part of the chart conjunct Pluto, which is basically saying, in order to change your legacy or where you're going long term, that change starts with you. And being that Pluto is your modern day ruler and Pluto is in the 4th house, it's saying you have to change your emotions. You have to change your home. You have to change your family. You have to look at the root issues of what's been going on, and that it may not necessarily be just about work and career. It may be about the legacy and what you're building in terms of your home, your family, your emotions, and kind of dealing with the past. So it's a little bit more complex for you, Scorpio. I think Pluto's ingress into your 4th house is really saying that there is a big change coming in the home, which can be brought on by you or through some kind of death or rebirth energy in the home or the family. The conjunction to Pluto makes me feel like there is a sense of recognizing that, you know, home or work maybe needs to be brought home, or that there needs to be lots of changes in the home to be able to better make some of the things happen that you're hoping to make happen out in the world professionally. At the time of the full moon, it will square Jupiter in your 7th house, which means a relationship, a partner, a spouse, a counselor, a guidance, counselor or a mentor is possibly going to be giving you some advice, or they're going to be talking to you about, what it is that they want and what they need, which is going to be prompting changes at work as well as at home. And if it is a romantic partner, it's them saying, hey, this situation is growing, or hey, I want to travel more, or hey, this is how sweet the future can be. And it'll have a big impact on what you're hoping to do out in the world. And you'll realize or recognize in order to do that, the change has to start with you. Let's take a look. And obviously this goes without being said, but the Sun-Pluto conjunction is watch for really the whole second half of January for some major change at home and in the family, or with a parent, with a living situation. The card that I get for you is the King of Cups, which is a good card. This can talk about, Pisces, Scorpios, or Cancers, so this can be addressing you personally. I think this is really talking about your emotions, because that's what the element of water is about. But the moon is about the emotions as well. With the moon in the top part of the chart, it's saying, like, what do you feel most emotionally connected to? Where do you feel the most engaged? Where are you enjoying yourself the most? Where are you the most creative, having the most fun? How does your job make you feel? If it's not making you feel well, then what do you need to change in order to do that, right? This is also talking about mastering something. So mastering your career, especially if you work in a field where you have to help emotionally take care of people or relate to people, or if you identify as being a healer, or you work in like the healing arts or intuitive work, that can come up for King of Cups as well. And really, I think this is about talking about complete emotional fulfillment in like, hey, look at what I've been able to accomplish. You can get a raise, you can find out you get the job. There can be huge accomplishments that can come with a full moon in the 10th house. However, at what cost? The opposition to the Sun and Pluto and the square to Jupiter says that it is inhibiting your ability to have a peaceful home and also have healthy relationships, and that it behooves of you to stay open to what relationships or partners are telling you right now, because it can really help you make some of the changes that you want to make. Good luck. We have Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. You'll have a full moon in Leo in your natal 9th house, Sag. This is in a fellow sister fire sign, so you'll be experiencing trines, especially if you're around 4 to 6 degrees of Sag. And the full moon will be in the 9th in opposition to the Sun and Pluto. in the 3rd. So when you have a full moon in the 9th house, this is putting the spotlight on philosophy, higher learning, long distance traveling, and really encourages you to explore your beliefs in higher education and also just your overall beliefs in life. It's a time to broaden your horizons and seek new perspectives. So trips, graduations, publishing, legal matters, all these things can come up with the full moon in the 9th house. I do think about how this is going to square Jupiter, and Jupiter is your chart ruler. So if we look at the Sun and Pluto in the 3rd, it's a major change or transformation with how you think, how you communicate, how you get around town, things like your vehicle, your neighborhood, your relationship with a sibling maybe. That may all be highlighted because of the full moon. And then the square to Jupiter is really bringing up where you personally, because you're Jupiter, are needing to learn to be of service or needing to, pick up the phone, call somebody, travel to somebody, support someone. And really, if anything, I think it can create a bit of like a kink in your schedule. I also feel like this is saying, you're possibly feeling a little restless or that you want more travel or you want more freedom, which you generally feel anyway because you're a Sagittarius. So this full moon in the 9th house is really highlighting this energy where you're like, I just want to get up and go. And Jupiter here is saying, okay, to do that, I really need to make some changes to my schedule or my health or my routine or where I'm working or how I'm working. So the Sun Pluto might say, well, it's time to change the vehicle to do that. Or, I need to get a passport, or I, need to file for a document to be able to get somewhere. I need to, possibly pick up the phone and call my sibling before I, book the trip. So you are playing a huge role basically in this particular full moon. If you're wanting to join a program, if you're wanting to publish a book, if you're wanting to reach out and talk to a mentor, these are all wonderful things you can do with a full moon in the 9th house as well. I think really what this comes down to is that this is also in houses that have a correlation to mutable energy, right? 3rd is communication ideas, 6th is service, 9th is beliefs. So really this is saying where can a little bit of faith, a little bit of better habits, tendencies, and maybe even growth in a sense of, being a little bit more consistent with your health habits or routines can really improve your communication, your travel, and your day-to-day experiences. Let's take a look. The card that I get is the 3 of Swords. I'm kind of thinking like, the square to your chart ruler may bring up some really difficult conversations because you're the one, who's kind of getting challenged here. The Sun is the fastest moving planet with the moon. It's squaring Jupiter, and Sun Pluto probably means that you're having to kind of admit some things, right? Pluto rules your subconscious. Have difficult conversations, talk about your fears, really relate some of that. Talk about your mental frustrations and have an outlet. The 3 of Swords wants you to pull the swords out. So it wants you to move away from pain, heartbreak, fear, and it wants you to be able to get into a state of healing. And in order to do that, you have to have those difficult conversations, or you have to kind of recognize what hasn't been working. So likely it is possible that you're dealing with some heartbreak. Definitely a Sun-Pluto transit can do that. I think the answer is being able to maybe go on a trip or, connect with a spiritual or a faith-based practice. So that way you can kind of work some of this stuff out of your system and recognize ways to adopt new habits. Once again, difficult card, very much so for you and for Leo. So that's very interesting. Let me know how that goes. So we've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You are going to be doing this full moon in Leo in your natal 8th house. It'll be opposing the Sun, which will be in your natal 2nd, conjunct Pluto. And for you, Capricorn, this is all about healing through transformation and shared resources. So the 8th house deals with deep transformation, shared resources, and psychological healing. A full moon here may bring intense emotions and a focus on joint finances, intimacy, and personal growth. Well, we know that the 8th house is the house of regeneration and sometimes death, releasing something and bringing something new in. I think that, the Sun Pluto in the 2nd house is really kind of saying it's time to kind of step into your personal power. It's time to take charge of a financial situation. It's time to get a better handling on your spending or on your resources. And it might also be about claiming what is yours. Because the sun rules the 8th house of other people's energy, so it can be their resources, it can be inheritances, taxes, joint resources. You're like, that's mine, or I need that. And the full moon might bring a completion or a conclusion to some of these matters. This can also be a time where there's a payout or like a partner receives a lump sum of money, and there's more security in the resources that you're getting from another person that you have access to. At the time of the full moon, Saturn, which is your ruler, is just still kind of hanging out in your 3rd house. Saturn will make an inconjunct or a quincunx to the moon. So it makes me feel like with Saturn here, this is you saying or having a conversation or signing something and reiterating like what you need. So maybe you're applying for a credit card or a loan. Maybe you tell a family member or a partner you need some assistance, or you say to somebody, no, I'm not sharing this with you anymore, or this isn't your resources. This all becomes much bigger because of the square to Jupiter as well. So Jupiter being in the 5th house reiterates that matters of the heart or children or love or romance are bringing on some of these really dramatic conversations about money and what is yours and what is someone else's. The 2nd, 5th, and 9th and 8th house are all financial houses as well. So I could see where there is like some major gain. Jupiter in the 5th house means that, you win the lottery, or you get a lump sum of cash, or, there is now a child that's in your life or on the way. And so you have to pay the debt, talk to your partner, kind of break down your walls. And be vulnerable. And so a lot of it's going to come down to what is yours and what is someone else's, and whether it's resources or children or just taking chances is pushing you to be a little bit more open with some of these things. I think of like, the 2nd house is where we spend the money, and the 8th house is where the credit is due. So if you've been a little spend happy, you might be a little shocked by like a bill or something that comes up, and you're like, okay, well, do I have to pay for this all by myself? And be really careful with like gambling or taking chances with hobbies or money, because there can definitely be some excess spending that can come with this transit. Let's take a look. The card that I get is the 3 of Wands. I like this. It's interesting that Saturn is in your 3rd house, and the 3 of Wands I feel like is about waiting for your ships to roll in. It's like, okay, I'm waiting for something to show up. So maybe you're waiting for somebody to make an offer or, give you something, or maybe somebody's telling you, hey, I'm sending you this check, or we're issuing you this refund, or hey, I want to help you. And you're like, okay, I'm welcoming that. But Saturn in the 3rd might mean that you're like, I'm not going to say anything. We had the conversation, and I'm going to wait for it to get here, or I'm going to allow that to happen on its own. I want somebody else to make the conscious decision that they're going to contribute it, that they're going to pay me back. 3 of Wands is also positive because it does talk about what you will do with those funds. So I kind of wonder with the full moon that's coming next in Virgo, if that's going to be about going on a trip, and doing something with that money, or money that you've been setting aside, going back to school, or maybe you have to get a loan okayed before you're able to start a new program. So that can all be kind of happening right now. So the future looks quite bright with this, and I think you have a lot to be welcoming from other people. Good luck. We've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You will be doing this full moon in Leo in your natal 7th house of relationships. It'll be making an opposition to the Sun and Pluto in your 1st house. All right, so my Aquarians, a 7th house full moon. Relationships obviously are going to take center stage because it's your 7th house, which is about your relationship to other people. Leo can be younger people, a lover, a romantic partner, or even a relationship with your child or a creative person. Now, the full moon represents a completion. So certainly you may feel like you're in a situation where there's a big decision that's about to be made in a relationship. So those of you guys who have been getting to know somebody, there can be some kind of something that's defined in a relationship. If you have been experiencing some rockiness in a relationship, this can be a turning point where you're making a decision about whether or not something's working for you. Regardless, it's a time to evaluate your partnerships, whether it's romantic or business oriented. Now, this particular full moon places the sun, which rules your partners, in your first house conjunct Pluto. So likely there is some drama in a relationship or relationship to someone else. You may experience somebody who is either all over you, like really interested in you with Sun Pluto on your ascendant, or they can be really adamant that you need to change in order to better a relationship, or that something needs to shift within you. So be mindful, you can get a lot of feedback during this full moon about what people are noticing, what changes you're going through. It can be a time where you can also pull somebody in and there's a very strong magnetic attraction. You could bring in a creative partner. You could bring in also a counselor or a therapist or somebody who can help you as you go through a profound personal change. You're in the midst of a Pluto transit now, especially if you're an early degree rising. So if you're not adapting well, maybe to changes with your body, changes with your career, what a wonderful time to bring somebody in who can kind of help you as you go through that transformation process, because the moon in the 7th house wants to relate to you. So that's really what this is about. Anyway, I think about the square to Jupiter. And it tells me that if there is a heightened sense of intensity going on with relationships, it could be because of home and family matters. So it can be like, well, we're having a little bit of strife, you know, because we're arguing about the kids, or, you know, we're stressed because we're moving. Jupiter in the 4th house wants to expand the home and the family in a good way, but Jupiter is getting closer and closer to Uranus. So you're feeling something that's kind of building. Personally, I look at this and I go, you know, there can be a lot of squabbling in relationships because there's too much growth too quickly, or possibly because, you know, you and a partner have two different ways of looking at how you would like to run your home or your household. Now, if you're single, I think it's almost easier to navigate because this full moon could, like I said, bring somebody in. The only challenge is that Jupiter's in the 4th house, and it might indicate that it's either somebody from the past that you're reassessing whether or not you want to go back to, or it can be that home matters are kind of getting in the way of being able to actually, you know, be in a relationship. Somebody might be living with parents they're taking care of. Somebody might be living further away. You could be living with somebody who's still got kids with them, and there's like a bunch of responsibility there. And so there can be friction in a relationship, quite literally, because there's just so much involvement with the family. So Jupiter can make things too big sometimes. Only you will know what this thing is, but I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate to being like, I have to be in a certain place because of my family, or because of this, or because of that. And if not, then you're finding that you're attracting people who are going through those experiences. So full moon of the 7th, big relationship changes. That starts with you and what you decide you want or don't want in relationships, and how you can better explain and relate to people as you're going through these really powerful shifts. Of course, you would get the star card. Okay, so this is your card, Aquarius. This is basically saying, like, doing the healing work, doing the clearing. It can mean that this is about healing something so you can have more togetherness with another person, being a part of the collective, and wishes coming true. So if you're like, I really, really want to meet somebody and I'm really ready and I've gone through the change, this can mean like, yes, it's possible for you to do that. But it can also mean that this is about being in a situation where you're around a group of people. It's not just about one person. It's like, okay, well, there could be a number of people that you're going out and you're meeting, that you're kind of making friends with, and having a choice. Certainly a multitude of options can come with the square to Jupiter, but also wish fulfillment. So what you're hoping to achieve in a relationship, or in regards to relationships, is very much possible. That can be with your clients if you have a client-based business. That can be with what you have to sell if you have an online business, or if you have services, your relationship with children, right? We can see enhancements when we see squares to Jupiter. It can enhance things, but also this is how people are responding to you changing now, okay? And so to me, it seems like you're really adamant about change, and it's like, how are people going to respond to that? We shall see. Let me know. Good luck. And then finally, we've got Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys will be doing this full moon in Leo in your natal 6th house, and it'll be opposing the Sun and Pluto in your 12th house. Well, Pisces, your traditional ruler is Jupiter, so both you and Sagittarius might really be feeling this full moon, not just Leos. So you might kind of feel like you're at a bit of like a crossroads, because Jupiter will be squaring the moon and the sun. A full moon in the 6th house brings your attention to health and routine, or your workspace, maybe even your pets. Because these are the focus of the 6th house, so a full moon here can have you reevaluating your habits, your work routines, your day-to-day life, your health, and your overall well-being. So I think of a full moon in the 6th house is like, okay, you know, if there is a health issue coming up, it's going to need to be dealt with, especially because the ruler, the sun, is in the 12th house conjunct Pluto. So overworking leads to burnout. So in the 12th house, you know, feeling under the weather leads to being in bed or needing to get medical treatment or going to the hospital. These are 12th house placements. Pluto's going into your 12th house too, so that's the other reason why I would really pay attention. Sometimes we have doctor's appointments, we get results, testing comes in during a full moon in the 6th house. But the 6th house is also about service. So I think of like how the moon's in the 6th house and it's putting it in the 12th, where you may feel like you want to give back to the collective, you want to help people, you want to do something differently. But also if you're just feeling overwhelmed and under the weather, you know, if you feel like you need to take better care of your health, it is important for you to be taking that time to rest and recuperate. Now, the square to Jupiter, which is your traditional ruler, seems to indicate that it might be mental stimulation, too much travel, too much communication. It might mean that there is a bit of, too much togetherness maybe with a sibling, which leads you to feeling like a little bit overwhelmed. And you're like, I just need some time alone. I need to be away. 12th house is where we retreat. Jupiter is a positive planet though. So it might mean that, you know, you're looking at this as a positive opportunity to say, hey, my body is telling me I need to slow down. I'm going to rest. I'm going to listen. Definitely pay attention to anything involving like your hands, because that could be the 3rd house, or anything with your fingers. And also I think that this is about recognizing and realizing like where there can be increased exhaustion, right? Jupiter is squaring the sun and Pluto, or increased mental stress, which could bring on health-related matters. And the awareness, I think, is everything here. So, you know, with the full moon in the 6th, if you've been working out well and taking care of your diet and your health, you can really be seeing the full results of that. For those of you guys who feel like you've been neglecting that, the square to Jupiter might mean that you're learning more about health and wellness and routines, and you're trying to find that balance that's not just mind and body, but spirit as well, especially with the sun and Pluto in the 12th. Now, there can be sudden changes to your schedule with the square. There can be sudden changes at work. You can be completing jobs, or also seeing that there's something kind of going on with people at work. Pluto is conjuncting the sun, and the sun rules the 6th house. So there can definitely be some inner office drama that can be coming up. And the square to Jupiter makes me wonder if it's a conversation, an email, or some bit of information that's released that causes some drama in the workplace. Let's take a look. The card that I get is the 8 of Coins, which is the card of working hard, perfecting your skills, working behind the scenes. Maybe you're feeling like, yes, I'm trying to take more time off, but I'm, you know, would rather work in private than working in an office space. Certainly Jupiter in the 3rd can have you commuting in a very different way. With Saturn and Neptune as well. So some of you guys are trying to kind of, you know, work remotely, or you're trying to have like a flexible schedule where you do a little bit of both in office and at home. Some of you guys are trying to find ways to be able to kind of like travel or relocate altogether and continue doing what you're doing. So if you're needing to take a break from work in order to, you know, facilitate finding a job that makes that possible, that can happen here as well. But for the most part, I think 8 of Coins is really about honing in on your craft and finding that it's a very productive time behind the scenes. Just remember that your wealth is in your health. It's very important that you take care of your physical body, because that's going to allow you to keep doing the work that you're doing. And work seems to be going very well with the 8 of Coins, because that's about producing and also having something of value. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys to give you a little bit more insight on this full moon in the sign of Leo. But let me know, what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen with this opposition to Pluto? Certainly with so many aspects in the skies, the end of January is going to be complete fireworks. I look forward to seeing what manifests, and I'm hoping that all of you guys are focusing on your creativity, your self-love, as well as your overall happiness and your joy. That's so important with this full moon. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and consider sending it to someone who could benefit from this information so we can make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. If you guys like my content and you'd like to book a personal reading with me, you can do that by heading over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. There's a ton of links in my description, so if you would like to take a look at my schedule to book a session with me for a live one-on-one Zoom call, to look at your natal chart or your transits, maybe talk about a solar return or a synastry reading for you and a partner, I do all of those things. There is availability on my calendar starting in March, and you can see all of the services that I offer. I also teach tarot and astrology, and I've got study at your own pace beginners programs on my website. So if you click my classes, you'll be able to see all of the stuff that I teach. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter so you can be alerted as to when I have new products and also new courses on my website. With that being said, enjoy the full moon. I hope it's a good one for you guys, and I will catch you all back here next time. Take care.